Fresh out the oven, it's Cinema Bums. I'm Emmett.
And I'm Wade.
Cinema Bums is a podcast where we watch through every single movie in popular film franchises, one each week, to try and track how the storytelling changes over time. Today, we are continuing our mini-series entitled Bums, Find a Way, covering every film in the Jurassic Park series. We will fully spoil today's film, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but we will not spoil any future entries in the series, because currently there aren't any, but there will be soon. Wade, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Emmett. Thank you for asking. Very excited to talk about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, or as I call it, the yassification of the Lost World Jurassic Park. Taking the plot from another movie and just smoothing over all of the edges.
No, not wrong. Not wrong at all.
How are you doing, Emmett?
I'm doing very well. I have that spring energy. It's finally friggin' spring, Ooh. Which is a dangerous time for me, but also an exciting and wonderful time for me. So, I'm excited. I hope this energy is infectious to you across the airwaves. I hope that everybody is feeling fun, feeling warm. Mm-hmm. I think the North in general, and by North, I mean anything north of southern Florida, should be permanently canceled between the months of October and late March. Mm-hmm. And we should just not with all of that.
Wait, how do you feel about this proposal to get rid of daylight savings time?
I am so utterly baffled by daylight savings time that I couldn't tell you whether I'm for or against this proposal. Mm-hmm. I know that there's two different types of daylight savings time proposals that they have. They have one, let's stay on daylight savings time, one, let's stay off daylight saving times forever. Either one is fine as long as we can pick one and stop having the switchover day. That's the thing that kills me. Right. I don't come down strong on either one or the other. An hour longer in the evening is nice for me, whichever one that is.
It's this one.
Is that this one?
Yeah, that's one, yeah.
I like that one. That one's cool. That's non-daylight savings, right?
Yes.
So that's staying off of daylight savings forever. All good with that.
Getting rid of it is the proposal.
And then people are like, oh, but it's going to be dark in the winter in the morning. Yeah, winter sucks already. Morning sucks already.
I just don't want the 4:30 p.m. sunsets anymore. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Now, see, I read, not to be contrarian about it, because I am of the same opinion, but I read that they did this in the 70s for 1 year. Uh-huh. And it was that thing that it was dark when kids were going to school in the morning in the winter. So then they changed it back.
Kids are inside. No one cares.
Yeah, you're
Fluorescent
inside.
lighting.
I mean, again, school sucks. Going to school in the morning sucks. It's going to suck a little bit more if it's dark, but not a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Get over it. Exactly. That's the main key. And you might have been wondering who this lovely voice is who's also talking about daylight savings with us. I have strong feelings
about daylight savings time.
Excellent. Well, today we are honored to have a special guest. Please welcome Emily Rayl Russell.
Woo! 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 Hi.
Hello. Emily, what is your previous experience with this movie? And or you can start either with this or with the greater Jurassic Park movie series.
Okay. Y'all already talked to my husband, Evan, so you already know that I have a Jurassic Park Jeep. We are deep in the Jurassic Park franchise, suddenly thrust into it back in May of 2020.
So how do you feel about the Jurassic Park Jeep?
I don't... It's fun. It definitely, when I see kids that get excited, that's the fun part, but I also have a lot of anxiety with public scrutiny sometimes. So when I'm just trying to go to pick up my groceries at Ralph's and people are like, hey, I'm like, hi, and I forget what I'm driving. So but it is fun getting top down. It is cool, and it is an envious type of car. But when we were apartment hunting a couple of years ago and we were looking at our house, it's in a neighborhood, and Evan's let's just go drive by and look at it, and I'm like, we can't do that yet. We're in the amount of attention to already be stalking a house that is up for rent and then doing it in a Jurassic Park Jeep. I'm like, But no, it's a lot of fun. We've done a lot of fun experiences with it. So I definitely have enjoyed that. But I grew up with Jurassic Park, like a lot of people probably did. For whatever reason, I love the third movie. We had that on VHS. That was the one, if I were to pick, I would pull that one out. I don't know why. I think I just loved the kids and I loved the pterodactyls, I think particularly. Yeah, I hadn't really revisited this one. And we watched it when it came out. We're so disgusted by it, we didn't revisit it. And now you've made me live the horrors again. So I'm ready to dive into this movie.
Okay, well, excellent. So that just queued us right up for our first question of the day here. Emily, Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, flop or bop?
It is a flop in my eyes. Let's get into it. It is a straight. I have never, in recent memory, remembered screaming in disgust more at a movie. Not only that, also just knowing before they tell you the plot, I think beat for beat, we were calling the movie as we watched it.
Okay, wait. Flop or bop?
Definitely a bop for me. I think this is a bizarre movie. It's just the type of big, wild swing that I really love. I think they are really going for some
It's a wide swing, I'll give them that.
It's very reverent and reminiscent, as I said, of The Lost World, which was always my favorite as a kid. So that was a big reason why I liked this to begin with. We might talk a little bit more about this, but watching all of these kind of in a row, I was really struck by the fact that this is the first, like, actual sequel in the Jurassic Park series. And that this is the first movie that is taking the characters and the plot of the direct last movie, following those up directly.
And did that work for it, is the real question.
I would say in my case it works because I really don't like the movie before, and this movie kind of makes me turn around on some of those characters. A lot of times just by sort of shoving all of the uncomfortable parts under the bed and being like, look, the room was always clean. You never saw the room before. It's always been nice. I was glad to revisit this movie. I also only saw it in theaters and have always kind of been like, was that real? Like, was that
just
a
my fever dream?
Yes, exactly. I remember I saw it in an empty theater. It was me and my mom, and no one else was there. And then every time I've talked about this movie since, Emmett has been like, I don't remember that. So, and everyone online with this movie, I know everyone on the internet hates this movie, which is totally fine. But all anyone ever talks about on the internet with this movie is how dumb the prices in the auction scene are. So I feel like for 4 years, I've just seen like every few months, a post will be like, this is the worst movie ever. They only sold a dinosaur for $10 million. It would be so much higher. And I've been like, okay, yes, okay, I remember that. But does anyone remember a movie where it suddenly becomes a Buster Keaton film and the dinosaur is winking at the camera as it is like silently about to bite a man's arm off? Does anyone remember the other weird things in this movie? Emmett, what do you think about this movie? Flop or bop?
This movie is a bop, and you're both right about it. You're both right about it, and it's a bop. It's okay. So Emily, I think you're so right about it. You can call everything that happens like right as it's about to happen. You're like ahead of the movie consistently. But I think that's the joy.
But can you at the beginning of the movie?
Yes.
Because there are several big lane shifts in this movie.
As soon as you get like a little bit, you're like, Like, okay, well, I won't get into all of my problems with it. But yeah, you definitely, as soon as they introduce you the inkling of here's where we're going to go, you're like, I know where this is going to go. There's no way around it. I'll give you, it's a bop if you want to shut your brain off for like 2.5 hours and just be like, I literally just want to be a vegetable right now. What can I put on for that? And then there you go. But if you want the heart, if we're talking about the heart of Jurassic Park, it just tanked.
Okay, so this movie is oops, all tropes. To like such an insane degree that I find it enjoyable. That's what it's got to be. It's like, it has to be the fact that it is like so over the top. Everyone is playing everything at 11 the entire movie. Like the evil assistant, like you call it from the first minute you see him on screen. I mean, you've got the army guy. It's everybody in this. You've got John Hammond 2.0.
Yeah. The best friend that like we've never heard about.
This is really It's to watch this movie is an experience that you can't have it any other way. And it's true what Wade said. I did not remember watching this movie. I watched this movie when it came out, certainly. I know that I did because there were a couple of moments where I was like, oh yeah, I remember having seen this before. But honestly, did not remember any of it when I was watching it. When they leave the island halfway, less than halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, forgot about that. Like, forgot that the second half of this movie is an auction in a gothic manor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. But definitely a bop for me.
It's fine. I'm sure it made a lot of money.
It did, which I was pretty shocked to see, because I feel like I don't remember this being a big deal. But it made like almost as much as Jurassic World, which I remember being a huge deal.
Right.
Here's another thing I like about this movie. It doesn't hate itself. And when the movie is telling you this movie doesn't deserve to exist, I tend to believe it.
You don't think this movie is just pulling itself through the mud, just trying to get to the next installment? Because my personal opinion, it's like, I think you're right that we don't remember it because it's so much like Lost World. I think there are a lot of parallels there. But I think this movie, being a direct sequel, has fallen into the problems that a lot of these like trilogies have been facing, where you're like, we have a strong opening and we want to get to that third movie to be a banger of an ending, and like all this stuff happens and you forget about the middle part where it's like you still need to have an entertaining thing that gets you to your big thing. And honestly, I'm like, I wish you would have just skipped all this and gone straight to, oh no, they're out. Like, just get straight to them being in the world. We had to spend an hour and a half or whatever in the mansion talking about this, killing off everybody we don't care about, and still kind of being in the same spot that we were in the first movie, except instead of being like, they're loose and on the islands, like, well, they're loose and like getting out. I think it hates itself in its own way of like, no one knew what they were doing and they just knew we had to get through it to get to the end. And that's where all the flaws are coming from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Emily on a lot of that. I think that this movie does have a little bit of middle movie-itis, where like,
it's a good word,
you meet a cast of supporting characters who are always in these Jurassic Park movies, but like for the first time those characters don't die, and it doesn't feel like the main characters are even in peril for most of this movie. It does kind of feel like cartoony in that way, which I kind of enjoy to a certain degree. But I do think that like by the time you see the post-credit scene of this movie, you're like, oh, Jurassic World. That's what this whole stupid thing is been about. That's why I watched these two dumb movies, so they could get to this one idea they had at the beginning.
And you see that and you're like, oh wait, I want to see that. And it's like, that's where we're getting to. And it was just like, this whole thing was hyping up the post-credit scene, which is all we really wanted. Like, if we're going to talk about crazy dinosaurs, it's like, how do we escalate from here? In Lost World, they're in San Diego, and that was probably like the selling point of that whole movie was like, oh look, they're out and terrorizing people. And it's like, now we've just taken forever to get to there where the threat is in the real world.
I do agree, but I also mostly enjoy the ride that this one takes to get there.
It's a ride.
Okay, here's one thing that I have about both of these newer movies. The genetically engineered to be like new and improved dinosaurs. I do not understand this plot point. I do not get how that is supposed to be compelling. I do not understand how you're going to be having created like a miracle of dinosaurs, and then we need to also make more like the dinosaurs need to be scarier. They need to be more intense. But never does that really ever play out properly, because all of the dinosaur chases throughout all 5 of these movies are basically the same stakes with the same sort of peril. What is the difference basically between being eaten by a velociraptor and being eaten by an indoraptor and being eaten by an Indominus Rex and a T-Rex? It's all being eaten.
Right.
There's an interesting thing at play in the first Jurassic Park where the velociraptors are intelligent but small and like sneaky and getting around, and the Tyrannosaurus causes huge destruction but is not malicious necessarily in the same way that the raptors are. But there's none of that ever carries over into either of these past 2 movies.
The velociraptors are intelligent in the first one, and the whole idea is all the animals are still just animals. In the first Jurassic World and in this one, you have Blue acting as this like humanitarian type of thing, being like relating to humans and like teaching them sympathy, being like, oh, I'm going to save my handler. You get none of that in the original Jurassic Park because they hammer into you, these are just animals trying to eat. It's when like Grant and Ellie all leave the visitor center in Jurassic Park. They're running away because like, oh, the T-Rex is distracted. Let's get out of here. It's not that the T-Rex is like, see ya, cowboys. Like, I got this. Let me handle this.
Yeah.
It's like he's just busy trying to not die and then trying to eat the velociraptors. And so it's like these more recent movies are trying to be like, well, dinosaurs are just like us. And it's like, no, that's the whole point, is they are wild animals that just want to eat and survive. And we keep trying to make them be like more human. And it's like, that's not at all what any of this is about.
And to that point, I really don't care in any of these movies when the dinosaurs fight each other. That is just like a bunch of CGI orbs to me.
Right.
I care about the human characters being in peril with the dinosaurs. So I feel like Jurassic World does that a lot. 3 and this movie also do it a little bit. But like whenever we cut away to get like a WWE SmackDown between two dinosaurs, I am like instantly tuning out.
Yeah.
Right. I have this conversation with my husband a lot just about like the stakes in movies and how we've just kind of gone so far. And it was like in the 90s, kind of up into early 2000s, going to the theater was an experience. So they kept making the movies bigger and bigger. Like, oh, you want to come to the theater for this. You don't want to wait. You want to see it because it's big and amazing. And we've kind of now just like lost all sense of that because everything is like superhero movies and these big blockbusters. And they have to keep raising the stakes each time because like, oh, now it's not just the world in danger, it's the universe and all this kind of stuff to make it bigger and grander. There's like no scale then. So in some ways, this movie does work because you contain it all to like the mansion, which I think does help kind of like scaleify it a bit. But I think you don't have the same kind of attachment. At least I personally didn't, like, to any of the characters. I'm all for a movie that'll just start killing people off because they can and not trying to hold on to them for the next movie. So I think it kind of had like these like dueling factors that in some ways worked because you brought it back. You went from the big world, bringing it back to a realistic type of area that we can all be like, oh, okay, here are the stakes. And kind of like, if they get out now, that is the bigger stake. But then also it's like, I just don't care anymore because clearly there's a lot of like logic and plot holes here that don't make any sense. So these dinosaurs should have been nuked a long time ago, honestly, because if you think about it, all the movies are canon up until that point. So they take into consideration 1, 2, 3, and then Jurassic World. These dinosaurs have already gotten out in San Diego and they're like, this isn't going to be a problem. And it's like, it is, and it was, and we're just doing it again, and nobody's stopping this.
Well, and you know what? That's an interesting point, even about the end of The Lost World, which depicts the dinosaurs returning to their natural environment as being like a happy ending,
right,
for the movie. And it's like this peaceful, like Malcolm and his daughter and Sarah are all watching that together, and like it's comforting to them. But like, that's not right either. That like shouldn't be it. None
of it's right. They're dead. They're extinct things.
Yeah.
And that's where I think like the opening of this movie is like, you know, it's a good conversation of like, are they unextinct or something like that? They have a term for them that they use.
It's de-extinct.
De-extinct.
I think is what they say.
And it is a conversation of like, well, technically these are endangered species, quote unquote, because there's only so many of them, but also they shouldn't even be here in the first place. And so I think that is an interesting, they are touching on some like, some good little factors here, but overall it's like, no, if you're going to go off of like the storyline itself, you have a track record of dinosaurs just killing people because people think they can handle it. And guess what? They can't. So how this hasn't been completely just taken out at this point after like multiple tourists gone missing.
Yeah.
So if you guys were facing the choice that our hero Claire has to make at the end of this movie between letting all of the dinosaurs die, but maintaining the status quo and being done with it seemingly, or letting all the dinosaurs free and like moving into a new age of human dinosaur open relationships.
I mean, like, she like watched all her coworkers die and then is like, they should be free. It's like, how do you like think of, I mean, I know she doesn't, I know she's the one that is like, they should die, but it's like, it's a hard decision. But if it's like between like, what would make me feel better and then what would put the rest of the world at stake, she made a good decision. But it's like, yeah, like you watched all your how is she not in jail? If she is security manager of a park that has now killed like dozens of people,
yeah, she should definitely.
She should be in jail.
Yeah, I have some questions about all of that too.
Yeah. It is also a very strange ending to come down on for the little girl. Because it's like this little girl who, she seems cool, she seems sweet, she loves her granddad. Then it turns out she's a clone. And that's interesting, but it's like used as a plot twist, but not ever touched on again. But then she's like, they're alive, just like me. And she has to let them go. So it's like, because she's also a clone, has sympathy for the dinosaurs? That seems like a very far-fetched sort of a thing, especially after she just got her ass chased around by these dinosaurs for like the last hour of the movie.
You're introducing us to a character that you're relying on, like, she's a cute kid, to like make us sympathetic for her. Like, what would have been the real kicker is if we find out that like halfway through the second movie, Claire is like the illegitimate like clone daughter of John Hammond or something. Like that would have made us been like, oh, we've been with her for like 4.5 hours now. Now there's actually stakes and a decision to be like, oh, who am I? But I'm like, I met this girl who like seems fun and cool, but like I don't care. I don't like care anything about her. Like, who's her mom? Like, should I care about her mom? Like, how great of a person was she that she needed to be cloned? Like, it's just all these kind of questions regarding that they just like, you should be caring about this when I don't. The only time I think I actually cared was that one shot of like with Brachiosaurus like crying as it gets enveloped in smoke on the island. Like they got me there because it just went like, oh, and I go, oh. So that was the one time I felt, and it wasn't even for any of the main characters. It was for a CGI dinosaur.
Yeah, man. That part is great. I'm unafraid. I'm unafraid to admit this on mic, although I know that I will perhaps get some comments for it. But I truly cried both times watching it when the little girl says, "They're just like me." Truly, both times it got me.
Yeah. But that
wait. I just want to say about this very quickly about the clone girl. A little tie-in. When I saw this in the theaters, I was like, "Oh, that's so weird. They're cloning humans now." Watching the original, having seen this movie, the first time we are introduced to the idea of what they're doing through the dinosaurs is through a video of John Hammond pretending to clone himself. Obviously, they weren't actually doing that, but we are like introduced to the concept through humans in the first place, and then they explain that's what they're doing with dinosaurs. So I do think there is at least some founding of this strange twist. Interesting. Although I do really wonder, like, how far do you go with it from here?
Right.
Or do you just never mention it again? And she's just like...
That's like the biggest thing. Yeah, I feel like it's, each one we're ramping up, we're going to, breed a new type of dinosaur. First it was like the Indominus Rex, like a bigger, better T-Rex. And now we're going, let's put intelligence in them. We're going to get Blue and get that Velociraptor DNA and make an intelligent raptor. So we're like amping up our like DNA creation in a way. And then it's like, well, now we're doing humans. So what are they going to do in the third one? Either just never talk about it again, or we're going to have like a human dinosaur hybrid that they're going to try and do. I don't know. They keep trying to ramp the stakes up, and then we're losing both the integrity of the first movie and the source material, and then just making it less and less realistic. I did believe in a way, based on the auction, if you're going to take the plot into context, yeah, we're going to create a dinosaur that's going to be a killing machine for everybody. I do believe that, like, for the millionaires, the military, like, I can see that being a plot point. I don't buy the first movie where they're just like, the focus groups that hate normal dinosaurs. And I'm like, have they been? It's probably like a group of people you ask online that have never been to the park. Like, every focus group is half people that don't care. So it's like, okay, why would you do that? And then again, that went so wrong. Why are we doing it again? I guess the people just think dinosaurs are cool. They're like kids that grew up and then didn't do their research for the group project. And then they just, why is this happening? And it's like, well, if you looked this up, it happens.
I will say, I think the integrity of the first movie is gone by the second movie.
Yeah.
I don't think that's even in the question of this movie by the time we get to it.
Also, this is a brief side note, but what is it with the Velociraptors never looking the same movie to movie? The Velociraptors do not have a consistent look across any of these movies.
Yeah.
If somebody would like to explain to me how dinosaurs that were all bred to be clones of one another started out as like kind of green-gray in the first one, morphed to a red and black tiger pattern for the second, and then become like blue and green and gray for the third, like bright colors, and now we're blue? I don't know.
Inbreeding.
It's very strange.
Just all the
that's true.
dinosaurs inbreed.
Those
Maybe.
weird stuff. Emily, to your point about like Marvel movies or like superhero movies, big blockbuster movies in general, I am very excited for Jurassic Universe.
Exactly.
I think when we get these
dinosaurs
in space, exactly. I was like, when we get dinosaurs in space, the stakes are huge. They couldn't possibly hire.
The comet comes back and brings them back.
And only dinosaurs could stop the comet that was going to cause the extinction of the human race.
The dinosaurs are going to go re-extinct. They're going to sacrifice themselves on the comet. It's going to be great. It's going to be big. The whole world.
And they're all going to be led by a little girl who is half human clone, half dinosaur, half velociraptor.
At the very end, she pops out a little claw and just wreaks havoc.
I did for a moment worry that's where we're going when they zoom in on the little girl's eye, and it's like the final shot before the ending montage. They just hold on it for a while, like the dinosaurs, the T-Rex and the Velociraptor eye shots.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like,
whose DNA did they splice hers with?
Right.
What kind of weird frogs did they have to mix up with her mom to get that?
Right.
You know, to the whole making the bigger, badder dinosaur conversation, none of these world movies have made a bigger dinosaur than the Spinosaurus in 3, which these two movies clearly want you to forget about, but like have not made a bigger or a scarier monster than the real dinosaur we saw in 3. And they're just kind of being like, hey, don't worry about that guy.
That was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, what is up with that? What is going on with that? Because you even see like a Suchomimus or something else that's like similar to a Spinosaurus but smaller, because it would suck. It would really suck if there was something bigger than an Indominus Rex around.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Spinosaurus is so cool. It's like super cool all on its own.
Well, that's the thing with like, I think like just scale too. It's like, to compare this like to Godzilla in a way, it's like this massive creature that like you're a speck of dust to them. What, wow, cool, but also like I'm more like the idea of a T-Rex being the size of my head, so it is like you can see them and you can imagine that in real life versus imagining a dinosaur 40 stories high or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, they were going a little too far out of their depth in 3, and then have, made that internal assessment back. And this is coming from somebody that worked on Godzilla movies. Godzilla is too big. Let's bring it back to realism here, guys.
I don't think this movie cares very much about the DNA plotline, though, or like the create the new monster thing. Because the last one's all about that. In this one, it's like there in the last 40 minutes.
It's there the whole time because they send him to go get Blue. It's the whole reason that Owen is on the island. Because they need that.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's there, but in terms of us having to watch the weird fake dinosaurs that they've made.
Yeah.
It's only there in the ending, and they purposely have a shot of like the dinosaur stepping on the vials of like the mixtures to be like, hey, we're not going to do this again. It's all real dinos now.
Yeah, I bet there's gonna be some huge thing in Jurassic
World. They're gonna have to
3.
be like, we're going to have to do this one final time. We got to make the dinosaur to do like erase all dinosaurs. Here's my predictions for the next movie. They're going to do something like that. Blue is going to have to like self-sacrifice to like for the greater good of saving the human race, and then we're going to lose either Claire or Owen. One of them is going to have to die. Because at this point, you got to start killing people off, because no one is happy until you start killing people off.
Are they going to kill one of the legacy actors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We watched the new Scream movie recently, and I think they put it best, like the requels and like all the different rules for, like the horror movies. I mean, you have to, Jurassic Park is a horror movie at a core, and especially Fallen Kingdom, they got a horror movie director to do this. And so that's where I think there are some good tension scenes. And if we're going to play by the horror movie standards and rules, if you're bringing these people back, one of them is going to have to like meet their maker for like what they've done.
Yeah.
I don't know who. I don't have predictions as to who. It'd be great if they killed off Malcolm, but they didn't, because that was the whole problem. Like with the first movie, But in the book, Malcolm dies. He just flat out is like killed off on a helicopter, like leaving the island. He just dies. But the performance was so good by Jeff Goldblum in the movie that the writer basically opens Jurassic Park 2, the book, is a monologue from Malcolm going like, they thought I was dead. I wasn't. And then he's just like back to life because he just wanted to see more Ian Malcolm by Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, I think what he writes is what the doctors did was amazing.
Yeah. So it's like, I think that like if they do anything, do that. It could be a callback to the book. Anything that calls back to like the book in good ways, I have credit to. And that's, the book has been right all along in the sense, because the book, even the whole plot is that velociraptors are on their way to the mainland. How do we stop that? And I feel like it's taken up until like this now to get to that point of the book being like, we can't let this get out. This is a dangerous creature that can like not part of our ecosystem, not part of our world. And we're just now getting to that tension.
But velociraptors are now our friends because of all of this stuff. So
we'll see.
One is. It's unclear if there are others, how many others there are. But there also in the ending montage, isn't there a shot of like Wu with the briefcase getting handed over or something? So like there is the implication that people are making more dinosaurs again.
And there's the whole idea, I'm not sure proven or disproven, that the plot of the following movie is going to be going back to get the Barbasol can with the original dinosaurs on the island.
But that island is burned. That island gets killed in this movie, so
gotta go digging. It's there.
I guess so.
But that couldn't possibly still have...
You're using your people logic. You're not using your movie logic.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's very fair. Wow, I hope that's not what it is. Wade, what are the very brief stats on this movie before we get too carried away?
I think we've covered a lot of it already, but this movie, the fifth film in this Jurassic franchise, released June 22nd, 2018, 3 years after World. And this next one is going to be 4 years later, which is like, I feel like a longer gap in between than a lot of these other big budget things. So I like that. I will say that in favor of this. Directed by J.A. Bayona. He's a Spanish horror director. The films he had done prior to this are The Orphanage, which is like a haunted house movie, The Impossible, which is a disaster movie, and A Monster Calls, which is a kid's horror movie. You start to see a little bit of Colin Trevorrow's genius in writing the script for this director, of what elements they're going to put into the script they write for this man.
Yeah.
Recently, since this movie, he's been the guy directing the Lord of the Rings Amazon Prime prequel show that's coming out this year. Written by Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly, who wrote the last one together. Colin did not direct this because he was doing episode 9, which he also wrote with Derek, and then that all fell apart.
Whoops, because he made a terrible movie before that.
Okay, I will say, this movie, worlds better than Rise of Skywalker. I mean, like 100 times more watchable and makes more sense, more consistent to things that were set up in the previous movie. So,
I will also say their script for their episode 9, Duel of the Fates, is way better than Rise of Skywalker. And I read it the day after seeing Rise of Skywalker, and I sometimes confuse which is I was talking about the ending of that movie to my brother recently, and he was like, "That's not the ending." And I was like, "Oh, that was the Duel of the Fates ending, not what they did in the movie."
Wow.
Well, it's something you see, just going back to the director, you're seeing a lot of this now with these big budget movies. They're pulling these directors who have no big budget experience. And it's kind of them acting as a pawn for the studio system. And I don't want to kind of name too many to then divulge projects I've worked on in my own personal opinion in the film industry, but big, $200 million movies. And the directors are kind of these first time being handed this large of a check for a project. And the studio will turn around and be like, you don't know what you're doing. We'll help you out here. And I think that's where some decisions can go awry in a lot of ways, because The director might have a good head on his shoulders, but when you're going from lower budget horror movie about an orphanage one place to being like, okay, now you have 2,000 VFX shots to make dinosaurs. We need you to go over here, here, and here and figure these decisions out right now. You're going to typically have the studio stepping in going, well, you've never handled something like this. We're going to help you out. And then they make those decisions for you. Sometimes that can harm a movie in a lot of capacities.
I know that's something that we've talked about before with some of the Marvel movies, and certainly with like when we were doing the Taika series, that's something that happened to Taika Waititi, and I think it's one of those instances where it turned out really, really well for both him and the studio when he directs Thor. But you could see that going if he wasn't such a confident director. Yeah,
it's a gamble, and that's why you will see, some movies where they have like the crew is shifting so quickly over time because like they're expendable. You're not like signing on Steven Spielberg to do a new Jurassic Park because you can't get rid of him then, but these like, lower budget, no name people, if they do bad, it's like it's a great way to point the blame on why a movie did bad. But if it did great, it's like they can go on, it's a great thing for them, but they're easily just a scapegoat if a movie doesn't do as well for a studio because you're like, well, he's his first time doing this,
Yeah, and Taika, had already done 4 movies over a decade,
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like Colin Trevorrow had done one small indie movie before getting handed the keys to Jurassic World, the first one.
Exactly.
So, and this did pretty well. As we mentioned, it made $1.3 billion, Two Worlds 1.6. Was the third highest grossing movie of 2018. And it made a little bit less than World, but it also had a smaller budget than Jurassic World.
Okay.
It was 170, and I think that World was in the 220 sort of range. Right. So those are the stats. Emmett, are there any story beats you want to talk about?
There are a couple of things I do want to talk about real quick. I've been tracking across this series either when you first see the dinosaurs or when they first get to the island. Let me say, they leave the island in this movie at the time in the first movie where you first see a dinosaur, like when they're first, like when they're, like they are already well onto that, which is really what tells you that this is not a movie about characters. Because the original Jurassic Park, it takes 40 minutes to set up characters, like here are these people, here are the conflicts, here's what's going on. It shows you something scary with the dinosaur up front so that you're hooked. But then it takes its time to establish all of that other stuff. And I think it's like not as clear in the second one, but it's still there. And they basically just shorten the time. So on this one, the 40-minute mark, they're off the island. You're basically into what feels to me like the third act of this movie that then takes an hour and 20 minutes to play out.
It's funny having it be a horror director, how much they do show it, because there's, a lot of like support. I don't know, I'm like floundering at the word, but there's a lot of data that supports not seeing something is like so much better, to go just to Spielberg in general, Jaws and Jurassic Park. I think I read that there's only like 8 minutes of actual dinosaur footage in the first Jurassic Park, some low number like that. And it's because you're just going like, what's that in the bushes? What's crawling above us, running from it. And I'm surprised for a horror director that these should be things that he is aware of, and maybe this was a studio pushback type of thing. And like, people want to see dinosaurs, but to have it be like we're on the island with the dinosaurs, seeing them running alongside them for the first 40 minutes, there's no horror there. Everything is all about it being in your face and like tensions there. The scene where it's like Franklin and Claire in the bunker where the lava's coming down and there's the dinosaur there coming after them. It's like, sure, but it would have been so much scarier if like, what if you like couldn't see because the lava's blocking you? You don't know where it's going to poke through at. We're relying on CGI too much and relying on those dinosaurs too much that we do lose the characters, I think.
I think it's really interesting because it feels like a horror movie a lot more. Like the first 40 minutes feel so much like the end of Jurassic World, the first one. And it's like, oh, okay, this is just like, that makes sense. This is the sequel to that movie. And then the last hour plus of this movie is something very different. Now you can agree or disagree about how good it is, how much fun we like, but it is very different structurally. And it's like it is that horror movie setup. They're all in the house. You've got trapped protagonists. And I do think you haven't seen the Indoraptor until like late in the game there. And that is the villain monster of this movie. So there is something there where it almost feels like he directed, like the directing starts 40 minutes in.
It's a good point. Yeah.
You know, like this turns into a movie where you care about characters and stuff about 40 minutes in.
And give me the super cut. Just lift the first chunk out.
Yeah, exactly. That could have been way more condensed for sure.
I think it turns into a different type of movie than you have seen in the Jurassic Park world in the last 40 minutes. And before that, it is doing what you already know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is more, but I think a lot of that stuff early on is really well directed too. I would push against that. I think the scene where they're in the gyrosphere and they go underwater, like, I think that's one of the best sequences.
Yeah, that is you know, I will give it the credit for that. Like, visually, that was a really fun, you know, like, there's tension there underwater. You know, I could see where, like, they would, like, stitch together a couple shots, but having it feel like the one continuous is, like, really well done.
Yeah. I think the whole movie is really well directed visually. Not talking so much about how much CGI, which I think gets a little wonky by the end, but just in terms of like where they've put the camera, and there are like so many good shots in this movie, so much more tension than has been in the last couple Jurassic Park movies in a lot of these sequences. And that's mostly what I really like about it, to be honest. It's just that I think it is mostly really thrilling.
I think the directing relies a lot on the previous movies, and it's stealing a lot. I watched a shot-by-shot recap of the first time they see the dinosaurs in the Jurassic Park and the first time they see the dinosaurs in Fallen Kingdom, and it is pretty much shot for shot watching the Brachiosauruses. And so I think there's a lot that they are pulling from because they like know what works, quote unquote. And with like CGI, you know, in a lot of ways, like that's directing, but not. A lot of it happens in post, and you have so much more freedom to shift. And I think a lot was just in those early dinosaur CGI moments, pulling just from previous movies and previous what works. I think there is something to be said about the house scene and that kind of tension and stuff.
All right. Wait, is there any behind the scenes drama on this?
Not that we haven't already covered. I mean, I guess the other thing is that J.A. Bayona was originally going to direct Jurassic World. He was the favorite for that before Trevorrow got involved. And it was Trevorrow who, in turn, I think, wrote this for him and asked him to do it when he was off for 9.
Interesting.
I guess, and this will lead us into cultural context, because this movie came out in summer 2018, but it was filmed in February 2017. Immediately after the inauguration. So I feel like a lot of sort of references in this movie maybe feel, I don't even know, old hat by the time this comes out, or by when you're watching it in 2022. But I will just say that it was filmed a month after.
Let me just say that this movie hits it on the nose so hard, because at first you're like, oh, it's a corporate creep. But then there's a guy who comes in who actually has Donald Trump's haircut. And
yes, exactly.
And is like running around in it, and he's this horrible little man who you just hate. And you just like love to hate him. And that's part of what I love about this movie is I love the two villains in this movie. I hate both of them so much that I love it. Yeah. It's just like, it's thrilling because I feel like Jurassic Park has never really leaned into the human villain. Quite like Ludlow is not a villain per se. Like there's weird moral gray stuff there, and he gets what he deserves. He gets eaten at the end, but he is not villainous. You know, he's not. He's like trying to make some money and just unethical. But he's not just killing. He's not gonna like smother. Like you don't picture Ludlow smothering Hammond with a pillow, which is just awesome. It's just such a great scene.
I don't think we've ever seen a human villain just kill another human.
Right.
There is like almost no human on human violence in any of these movies, and that's like such a big shift, especially in the second half of this movie.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, what about Jeff Goldblum? I see something about Jeff Goldblum in here. Wade.
Just that almost all of Malcolm's dialogue in this movie is taken from the books.
Oh.
I think almost every single line, except for obviously the stuff where he's talking about like cell phones and the internet and whatever. But almost every single line he has in those two little bookend scenes he does is just a Malcolm quote from the book that hadn't been used in the movies that they take.
You know, that was a big point of controversy, I think, when the trailer came out versus the actual movie, because pretty much his scene is the trailer. And everyone's like, oh, Malcolm's going to be a big part in this, guys. And then literally you get him. And then like when we finished the movie, we realized we only saw him like those like small times. And it was like, I thought we were going to get a lot more. It's like with Bryan Cranston in Godzilla when that movie came out. You get this whole thing of like Bryan Cranston's going to be in Godzilla, guys, 2014, let's go. And they kill him off within 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Coming from a trailer marketing background, they're doing exactly their job as like, I don't give a crap what the movie is about, but what's going to get people into the theater. And so it's like, well, Ian Malcolm is going to get people to come see this movie thinking they'll get to see him. And they do. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see this, the new movie where, I do think the legacy characters are going to have a bigger role to play than he did in this, but it'll be interesting to see how much they do use them.
It is funny in that trailer for the new one that both Jeff Goldblum and Sam Neill look so much younger than they did in their last film appearances in this series. Like Malcolm in this looks like old man, retired. He's got the beard, he's got the suit. Yeah. And then in the new one, he's like clean shaven, young in the open shirt. Sam Neill looks so much better than he did in 3.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. Something else about this movie that I just want to call out is that it is really going for jokes in a way that a lot of the others have not been, which is nice after World, which is like so dour.
The only joke that Jurassic World has is like hitting itself in the face with a frying pan.
Right.
I feel like that's part of the course correction with Chris Pratt in his character. It's just that they're like, oh, we'll let him be funny now.
But is he that funny? Is he that funny in this movie?
No, but he makes jokes, which he didn't in the last one.
He's a lot better than whatever he was doing in the last movie.
I feel like a lot of these characters, they were just like, and be yourself, have fun with it. And that's how we ended up with the characters in this movie.
Yes, when you said that Colin Trevorrow wrote this movie, Wade, I was like, are we sure? How much writing went into this? Okay, Emily, I've got a question for you to help start to wrap things up here. Who is your MVP other than the protagonist, which I don't know who the protagonist in this movie is, so I would take off Owen and Claire, and you can choose anyone else other than that.
The character that I definitely like vibed with the most was Franklin, because I thought he was the most realistic interpretation of somebody that's like, I'm a data pusher, I do this. And then he doesn't stop screaming from the second he steps onto the island. And I'm like, that's how we all would be. I feel like you can be excited for dinosaurs and be like sick, but the second that they are loose and there is like a T-Rex that has a high body count and you don't know where it is, how are you not like, get me off this island? He's the best. I relate to him the most, and I wish the best for him.
I love Franklin. I love Justice Smith, the actor. He's so good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that he's like the best new character we've had in one of these movies in a long time. Like how they have not gotten to the trope of like a germaphobe who is absolutely terrified of dinosaurs being on Dinosaur Island before now is wild that it took this long, but it is such a good execution of that.
All previous movies, especially going back to like Jurassic Park 2 and 3, you have people afraid of dinosaurs, but they all have like a stoic moment in it. It's like they're running, but they're always like, well, we got to find like our lost son, or oh, we got to find my wife. Everyone seems to be like a braver face than everybody, and like Franklin feels like what it would be. It's like we're going back to
Lex.
Yeah, but like, she like, I just always think about her just screaming, they pull her out of the car when the T-Rex attacks and she just loses it. That's what we all would be doing. We'd be like, oh my God. And so the fact that Franklin, even though he's like, hasn't seen one yet, everything he talks about is like, what was that? Was that a dinosaur? It's like, that's how we all would be when they're no longer in cages. So I do think, he's probably the character that we all can relate to in our, like, even if we don't admit it, like we do. And the most realistic of the situation.
I also thought to this point about this character that these two sidekicks, him and the woman who I'm not sure, don't remember what her name was either. Zia. They were the first sidekicks that at least since the first movie, maybe ever, that have had both a personality and a thing that they are good at. So that they're like actually a useful part of a team and make a difference in a storytelling perspective.
They have to move it forward.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that has not happened since Vince Vaughn kind of moves the plot forward in Lost World when he brings out the wrench, which is completely arbitrary in that film too.
I love the sequence, maybe my favorite in the whole movie, where they have to do the blood transfusion on the ship, and like he has to be the one who holds it down, and they have to like sneak around the T-Rex while it's sleeping and it can wake up. Yeah. I love that part. And I do feel like Franklin and Zia kind of disappear in the third act. I wish they had a little more to do.
But I'm sure they're bringing them back for the new movie, right?
Yeah, they are in the next one. So
I'll get some more.
Hopefully they'll get eaten. I mean, I like them, but I hope they'll get eaten because somebody has to.
There are also a lot of new cast members.
They're going to get eaten.
Which is who I'm guessing is going to get eaten.
Yeah, you're going to actually get eaten? Okay, wait. Who's your MVP, OTP?
Okay, my favorite is also Franklin. I would give my MVP then in turn, I think, to Toby Jones playing Auction Man. Whoever, it's not a character, but he just elevates it so much with his presence. That incredible shot of his hair toupee flying back as he's about to get eaten. I just feel like he's like really classes up the joint in this movie in the last half.
Really does. I know he's been in a couple of Marvel movies, maybe a Marvel movie or some superhero movie as a villain, but I think never used quite right. I feel like he would be really good in this new franchise of Batman movies, though, if they could find the right...
They've already got the Penguin filled, so I don't know.
I know, but there's got to be some other weird little guy that he could...
Professor Pig?
Yeah.
I do think this movie is very, very reactionary to the last one. And I feel like that's part of why it's only the bad guys who get these really vicious deaths.
Oh.
After all the blowback about the secretary being eaten in the last one. And even that this movie, like, the first time you see Claire, it's a shot of her shoes. And she's, like, not wearing heels. She's wearing flats.
Oh, my God.
And then they, like, pan up the camera to the rest of her. I feel like a lot of this movie is...
Yeah, because that was the whole thing of, like, her just running through the whole movie in heels. And it was like, ditch your shoes at that point. Life or death. You ain't got to look cute, girl.
Yeah. I know you have work boots. Like, you run Jurassic World. I know you have work boots.
Yeah. Emmett, who's your MVP?
I'm going to go with Eli, I think his name is, the creepy assistant. He is fascinating to watch. In every scene that he's in, he's playing everything, like I said, so loudly. Like, just... But it's like just unhinged enough that it works.
I love the scene where he just like unloads on like Maisie, the little girl, and then he goes like, I'm sorry, I'll come and like read you a book in a minute. I think we've all been there, like when my dog won't stop being in my way and I'm just like, just sit down. I'm sorry, I'll come pet you in a second. I'll be right there. That definitely was a fan favorite moment.
Yeah, and I love all this stuff with him and Maisie. I think that does get interesting. That's like a cool dynamic that we haven't seen before in any of these movies, like we said, about like the human villain chasing around the kid and like that being the tension there. I think that's cool. So I would give it to him.
I think it's a good performance by Rafe Spall, but you kind of got to wonder if Sam Rockwell was busy. Like, what was he doing at the time for them not to have cast him as that role?
Damn.
Interesting. That's interesting. Emily, do you have any final thoughts on Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom before we wrap this up? Burn it?
Okay. Should just put the DVD on the island with the volcano and just let it become one. It's fun. Like I said, if you want to check out, it's fun. But I do think it's got like that, what'd you say, Wade? It was like the middle movie syndrome. I think that definitely is a detriment to it, where we're sacrificing a lot just to carry our characters through to the next plot point. Yeah, it's fun, but give me Jurassic Park, the OG. Should have just been there and done.
Fair enough.
It is interesting because you feel like you could just do an entirely new movie about people and dinosaurs interacting and come up with some other different way for that to have happened.
You could still have you could still have a Jurassic World, like we built a thing. I mean, you could even still do like DNA and dinosaurs. Like these ideas that are presented in Jurassic Park aren't like new ideas, like they are and they aren't, it's like you break it down, there's only so much you can do with technology. And so you could easily be like, oh, we've been sequencing human DNA in a computer for forever and we've been making tweaks and seeing what that brings us, because now we have programs to like visualize DNA. So like some guy could just be spending 20 years of his life playing around with it and been like, I've done it, I've created dinosaurs, and then bring them back, And which I think is so interesting about Jurassic World, I guess, in a way, is, I mean, if you call the T-Rex a character, but that one really doesn't bring a lot back. Typically, you have with the reboots, you're bringing back somebody else when you're tying it into that. So the fact that it came out without any character and stood on its own is impressive. It kind of shows you the state of the franchise when we're now having to bring back those actors. And it's like, well, I guess you can't stand on your own anymore. Sounds like you need the magic of the first one, which I don't know if it'll bring or not, because there's a lot missing just besides characters. Because Colin Trevorrow is doing the new one, right? He's back. Mm-hmm. I have my reservations about him. So, I'm curious to see how much these characters are going to like be themselves, and be the ones we think they are. Because...
Yeah. I do think that Malcolm feels like himself in this movie. I wrote that down.
Wade, final thoughts?
I just want to say that I really like Bryce Dallas Howard. Pretty much from every angle. I think she's a really good actress and like makes a lot of interesting choices, both in how she plays parts and in projects she takes on. I also think that she's a really good director, which is another thing I really like. I think she's one of like the only modern Star Wars directors who like understands what makes Star Wars really exciting and fun. Mm-hmm. Even compared to like a lot of other directors on The Mandalorian and other stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I really love her, and I like this movie because it does feel like her movie to me. Mm-hmm. In a way that I can't really tell whose movie Jurassic World is.
She does have an arc when a lot of other people don't, because you have her going from free the dinosaurs to then questioning what does it mean to free the dinosaurs. So I think she does have that moment when, a lot of other characters you can't really say the same for in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you have her and Owen who have like never been able to make it work, and now they're like adopted parents to a little girl. And that is like a compelling relationship. I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm a little less sold on the Owen side of things because I feel like his primary relationship is with Blue, and that's like what has been fleshed out so much more than with any other human in these movies. Okay, I do think that this one is well directed, and at the end of the day, a lot of why I like this movie is because I feel like they've put a lot of tension into the scenes, and they've come up with like some really clever scenes. That's like about as much as I expect from these movies at this point. Mm-hmm. I think the introduction is really good and like grabs you in. I love the gyrosphere scene in the water. I love the transferring blood scene on the ship. The scene where they have to drive the van onto the ship and it's like pulling away is just like an insane thing. All of that, even the fact that there's like a hand-to-hand fight in this movie for the first time ever is kind of going to like the cartoonification that this movie is going for, which really works for me, but I get it not working as much, especially compared to the tone of the original. Okay, my last final thought is that an incredible thing happened to me while watching this movie, which is that our like speaker system has Alexa on it and heard us talking during the movie and thought that we asked Alexa to play songs from Moana. I don't know how this possibly happened because we didn't say either of those words. During the auction scene, when the little hard-headed guy gets loose and there's like the whole breakout fight, the movie kept playing, but it took away all of the audio and it started playing We Know the Way from Moana. And when I tell you that it synced up
perfectly, they sent me a video and it synced up.
Oh my god,
perfectly! Yes, we might try and post the video on Instagram.
Amazing.
But we might get copyright strike, so I don't know. But it's it's Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he keeps going away, away, as like all of the people are running away from the auction.
Oh my god!
It just really improved the whole thing.
I believe it. Just turn Jurassic Park into a musical. Where's that at?
I mean, Jurassic Park on Broadway, I'm pretty sure is opening in a couple
I'm sure,
weeks,
yeah.
So.
Emmett, what are your final thoughts on this Fallen Kingdom?
One of you said it earlier about the whole point of this new series is to get to the point where it's Jurassic World. The first Jurassic World doesn't ever get there. The second one, it gets there at the very end. I'm interested to see what it is once it actually is a Jurassic World.
Right.
I totally agree with Emily that I think they should just have let this die. Like, very clearly that Jurassic Park 3 should have been the nail in the coffin.
Right.
And I do think Jurassic Park 3 is a fine movie. It's fun to watch.
I loved it growing up. I can't tell you why, but it was my favorite.
But there's completely nothing in that movie of, like, the thematic or character or, like, writing qualities of the original. And so, like, once you get there, it's like, because at this point it feels like they're trying to turn it almost into like a slasher franchise, but the body count isn't high enough. If you're going to do that, it's like a slasher for kids. You need better tension and more death, I think, to sell it. I don't know. Obviously it's not going to be over yet until Dominion happens, but I doubt it'll be over then. And that's what I'm afraid of, basically. It's just like ad infinitum. Like, is there ever going to be anything that I loved when I was a kid that hasn't retroactively become stupid because of the number of sequels made about it?
I think the safe one is The Princess Bride.
No one will ever.
That's the one that's never getting touched.
The one time they did touch it was that like COVID home video, and that was stunning.
Was it all the same actors?
No. This was
doing
like
the
they basically, when COVID started, they all redid the script, but it was like each actor got like a minute or like 30 seconds, and so you just have all these different like actors coming together filming Princess Bride in little small chunks, like a big like a collaborative project. It's a lot of fun.
But that's a totally different
it
thing.
Is. But I'm like, so it's like, I endorse that one thing for Princess Bride, but do not touch it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to give you guys the Bums the Word quiz now. I'm going to describe films, and you're going to try and guess the name. The two lists that I'm pulling from are 10 times movies depicted big businesses as the villain, and Screen Rant, Like a Boss, 10 most hilarious corporate villains in the movies. For the first film on the quiz today, this is another franchise, a really fascinating one that, like, I've never seen a movie from, that I think could be really cool to do on this podcast, but I really don't know. It's about the zombie apocalypse, and the zombie apocalypse being caused by a big evil corporation. I believe it is based on a series of video games, but the video games may in fact be based on the movies. I'm not sure.
Is it a Resident Evil movie?
It is Resident Evil, yeah.
Okay, so when I was watching this movie, I wrote down that Zia looks exactly like Jill Valentine from all of the Resident Evil movies, is styled exactly like her.
Oh, wow.
And then I looked her up and found out that she had played Faye Valentine in the live action
Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah, the Cowboy Bebop.
That's funny.
Wait, there's a Cowboy Bebop live action? Is it?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've also not finished the Cowboy Bebop series. But mixed reviews. It came out, but it was canceled. So I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, and Netflix like never cancels anything.
Right.
Officially, and they officially canceled it like a month after it came out.
They like keep canceling these shows, like these live actions that get terrible reviews, and then they just keep making them. Like they announced like a One Piece live action, and it's like, didn't you just cancel a live action anime reboot? Because like, and it was the one that like there were fans of it. There were like a good chunk. It was like 50-50 versus like the rest of them feel like an 80-20 dislike ratio.
All right, so next is movie number 2. It's a science fiction film from 1997 starring a famous action star and also one of my favorite actors anyway, as the villain that got it on this list. He is a futuristic corporatist baddie. He owns gun companies and taxi companies and has a really weird looking outfit.
Oh, why am I forgetting? Is this Fifth Element?
It is Fifth Element. Nice work.
You know, they never meet in that. The villain and the protagonist never actually meet in that movie.
That is a fascinating bit of trivia. So the next movie is from 2014. It's an animated film, although the Academy might disagree.
Is this the Lego Movie?
That is correct.
I knew it. The snub still burns.
Damn.
Still burns. Okay, this next movie is from 1987, another science fiction movie. He is one of the most infamous evil corporate executives of the 1980s cinema. He could be viewed as an amalgamation of everything wrong with the decade's cutthroat business ethics.
Is this a RoboCop movie?
It is RoboCop, the original.
Okay.
I have not seen RoboCop.
I have not seen it either. All right, this next movie is reportedly a comedy. It's from 2008.
Reportedly a comedy?
It is famously a movie within a movie. And the character that got this on the list is the in-world producer, executive calling the shots on the movie within the movie.
Oh, okay. Is this Tropic Thunder?
That is correct. It is Tropic Thunder.
Okay.
All right, next up, we have got a classic movie from 2005. It's a remake of a movie from the 1970s. It stars Jim Carrey and Jurassic Park tie-in Tia Leone.
Whoa.
The name might remind one of the names of a popular children's Learn to Read series from even earlier than the movie, than the original movie, like from the 1940s and 50s.
Jack and Jill? Isn't that something different?
That's close.
That's Adam
You're close.
Right.
The plot follows a married couple that has to resort to a life of crime in order to stay afloat after a
Evan's
company.
going to listen to this podcast and hate me because he has talked to me about this movie and has told me I need to watch it. So now he's going to come to me. I know exactly what you're talking about. They go on like a whole road trip or something.
Probably. I haven't seen this movie, so I would not know myself.
You said this movie is a classic, or it's a remake of it?
It's a remake of a 1977 classic. This is from 2005.
Is it like a Bonnie and Clyde type of movie?
No.
Is the title just the names?
It is the names with like one other thing.
You, Me, and Dupree.
Nope. I told you it had Jim Carrey
Right.
in it, right? Okay, so you can picture a cover of this movie. If you are picturing the cover of this movie, it has got Jim Carrey and Tia Leone. They look like fun, flirty, young professionals. He's on one side, she's on the other. Right in the middle, there's the big red title on a white background.
Running with Scissors is the thing that's coming to me, but I don't think it's that.
Fun with Dick and Jane is the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never seen it. I would have confused it with Mr. and Mrs. Smith if you had put me up for it. So
Okay.
all right, this next movie is a 2006 sci-fi comedy, full of familiar faces like Maya Rudolph, Dax Shepard, and Terry Crews. Oh, in this movie, two people decide to become a part of a military experiment with human hibernation. They hibernate for 500 years, and then they wake up in a future where they are the smartest men on Earth. Because the rest of the world had gotten dumb. This movie stars Luke Wilson, I believe.
I don't think I know this movie.
Yeah, I've never heard of this movie.
You just gave me so much and none of it rang a bell, so I don't think I know what this is.
That would be the film Idiocracy from 2006.
Okay.
Last but not least, I don't know what number this is, and Emily, if you guess this right, you win. So good luck. We've got... It's another Jim Carrey movie.
No.
It's another movie where big business might be considered the villain, although maybe the entertainment...
This is The Truman Show?
It is, in fact, The Truman Show. You're correct.
I was waiting. That's when you said Jim Carrey for the last one. I was like, oh yeah, Truman Show. And then it was...
You have won the game, Emily. Thank you so much for
Yay!
being here. Is there any place where the people can find your voice, your work, anything, projects you'd like to plug?
No.
No?
I usually do a lot of work with my husband. He's kind of like the powerhouse entertainer in our family, but I'm sure if you follow him, you've seen my editing on a couple of his shorts. But typically I work in feature films. If you watched Godzilla King of Monsters, I brought those people food that cut the movie. And then most recently, I worked on a movie called Cop Shop, which Gerard Butler and Frank Grillo, and I helped put the movie together at the end process with my amazing editor, Kevin. So yeah, I'm a lot of behind the scenes work. I'm not really that vocal, but I had a blast of a time being vocal today on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Yeah, we really appreciate you making
awesome.
time in your busy schedule, making the movies that we love to watch. So
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Up next, Cinema Bums. We'll be talking about Jordan Peele's Nope in 17 weeks. Also, Wendell and Wild, written by Jordan Peele and directed by Henry Selick, dropping on Netflix this October. So another Jordan Peele joint that we get to talk about this same year. Truly an embarrassment of riches.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we'll be back on Friday to rank the Jurassic Park movies, talk about the short films, talk about maybe some other predictions for Dominion, although we talked a little bit about that today, and announce our next mini-series, which really puts the emphasis on mini. So
No,
I hope
you are not.
will...
You are not. What are you
What?
covering? You can tell me after the fact. I don't know. I'm
We
making.
can tell you after.
What do you think?
What did you think from that? The Minnie Mouse movie? That's not
No.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was
Minions?
thinking Minions, but
Here's a question for you right now. Do you think if we do the Minions ever as a series, do we have to do Despicable Me also? Or can we just do the Minions?
you gotta do
films?
Despicable Me.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, I'm unwilling to do it. If it was just the Minions, I'm in. Everybody out there on this lovely, warm spring day, stay frosted. Cinema Bums is a production of DKG Podcasts. It is created and produced by Wade Lawrence Holloman and me, Emmett Temple. Wade also edits and mixes the podcast. Our theme music is by Zane Holloman, who you can find on Bandcamp, and our show art is by Autumn Beckner. Our social media is managed by Laura Bennett. If you like what you hear, please tell all your friends and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, the 2 best ways to spread the word about our work. You can also follow us on Instagram @CinemaBums or email us at cinemabumspod@gmail.com. Don't flake on us. We'll be back next week.